Hello, welcome my local drones, and this is Bio Gundam here, and I'm back again for another video. And so today I figured we'll do a little today we're going to have a little chat with my good buddy, the average Aspie. Today I'll be asking my good buddy, the average Aspie, for his thoughts on dubs, since he's very well versed in dubs and voice acting and Sentai Filmworks. So, average Aspie, would you like to say hello?
Howdy.
He's a little shy. So for for our first question for our lovely guest is question number one: what is the history of anime dubs?
Well, that is a very broad statement, and to clarify, I'm not really much of a researcher. I just like looking at the history of R1 licensing companies. R1 as in the first region, based on DVDs for anime distribution in North America and other parts of North America, of course. I can't really like specifically explain like the very beginning of what happened with dubbing. I can like mention like certain points that happened, but I haven't got to much research on that stuff. Mostly the most research I had done was from the 80s and 90s somewhat, though from stuff you could probably look at from just like Wikipedia stuff if you find very good articles that are supported. Can mention like stuff like back like basically the most thing with anime dubbing started like basically back in like the 60s and stuff with Astro Boy and Speed Racer. Specifically, Astro Boy started up, was done by NBC, and then later on, some person that Ghost wrote on it was Peter Fernandez, who did the production for Speed Racer. So there is a big link between Astro Boy and Speed Racer, and that's mostly all I know about the 60s and 70s as of now. Sure, there's Super Dimension Fortress Macross. One little tidbit that I found is that a writer for it, Tom Weiner, if this is correct, apparently he wrote for Super Dimension Fortress Macross from Harmony Gold. But he also was the ADR scriptwriter for some very special Genyon slash Bondi titles, like Fafner, Gungrave, Heat Guy J, and Samurai Champloo. So this dude that worked on Harmony Gold, apparently, hopefully this is true, he did a very big landmark when it came to localization to America using Japanese animated television shows. But now I can remember all this stuff in the back of my head of the 90s and such, like from 1992, of how like ADV started out with Matt Greenfield and I forgot the other dude's name, but he's now like the CEO for like Sentai and stuff. Then in 1994 with Funimation, like apparently like he just told someone to like invest into production of like cartoons and stuff. And then they were working on they didn't like dub their stuff in the beginning. They started out with Dragon Ball, but then they were working with like Ocean and like another studio until finally they decided to bring everything in house. But this was not during the 1994. This was a long process before roughly like the early 2000s. And then with the early 2000s, Funimation got bought up from the Navarre Corporation, and they've been doing good. But then they got bought out by the same like by Gen himself with a bunch of other investors. So it was like they got bought up by a company for loads of cash, probably the same amount as for the Sony acquisition, but bigger due to inflation. And then again bought them out of Navarre for basically like a quarter of the price that they were bought in for, which makes me think that with this thing happening in history and history sometimes repeating itself, Sony buys Funimation, but then Funimation will sooner or later buy themselves off for a cheaper price and stuff. It's a very interesting tactic to use. But either way, for the 90s and from the early 2000s, I mostly know about some parts of the dubbing and the business side. But yeah, going even further, I might be going on a bit of a tangent and stuff, or I'm just going to be repeating myself over. So yeah, to answer your question, I know some stuff about it, but I'm not that much of like an expert on it. I just think it's very interesting to look into, but if I do forget some stuff or if my information is off, then I'm fine of going back or looking some information and
Sadly, no
figuring
one
it
will
out
blame
again.
you. It's fine. So, do you want to move on to the second question? Okay, so the second question is, what is your thoughts on the business practices with certain dubbing companies, with certain voice actors being involved in sketchy stuff or sort of business deals or business practices that you find a bit sketchy? Like, what is your thoughts on that? I mean, Aspie, I'll edit that.
Like, can you give like a certain example what you would think a sketchy would be? Like the Sojitz deal that ADV did?
I mean, just sketchy and sort of like, what happens in the anime industry where they overwork people or people are unhappy or people like skimming stuff off the top, kind of dodgy business practices. Like, what is your thoughts on it? Or some of the scandals?
Well, a lot of companies really have like some moments with their staff where some people are overworked or certain drama starts happening. Like apparently there was stuff between Jessica Cavello and Stephen Foster. I don't want to get too much into detail on that because this sounds like really, really personal, unless if it's behind like more private chatter. Um, but mostly what I consider shady is business practices of acquisitions, partnerships, and such. Like, as I mentioned, ADV with Sojitz. The Sojitz deal that was under ADV gave Sojitz like a lot of power when they were part of the production committee to like buy so much titles for ADV, mostly under ADV's nose or behind their back. So it basically left ADV into a huge amount of debt, like potentially around to the 9 or 10 million dollars worth. And with that, it led to ADV to near bankruptcy, not only just from the Sojitz deal, but them expanding way too far. Apparently, ADV had basically their only biggest selling title was Neon Genesis Evangelion. Like people keep saying, like, "Oh, Funimation is riding on Dragon Balls." No, they aren't anymore. And the license that they got for Super, it's not really that big of a license for how much they have. They don't really have so much of the merchandising and any other types of rights that they would have for a master license or so forth, from what I'm looking into. But with Neon Genesis Evangelion, that was like ADV's like it was Super Fortress Macross, basically. It was their biggest title that was keeping them afloat, basically. And no matter how many titles that they were just throwing to the wall, they weren't getting as much, or they just spent too much money on it and put too much faith into it, and only to have the titles crash and burn. And that's possibly why they went over to Sojitz, for someone that's a little bit more deeper into the production committees and stuff, to find more information or to get titles that they think would be good enough. But again, it didn't help. So after ADV was building themselves up, trying to like get into music, not like music as in making music, distributing music, like Genion. It's hard. I have an issue pronouncing it. Manga, they were the ones that got the Yotsuba manga for like the first 7 volumes, I think. I may be wrong. And also, the biggest thing that no other company has now done, despite how big the industry is now, like, sure, we have Funimation being a part of the committees again, but not only ADV was part of the committees, but they also had their own little like animation department that would help do stuff like Lady Death, Sin. Maybe it was Sin, or maybe it was some other title name. I don't know, but yeah, Matt Greenfield would show cells that their studio would actually work on for specific titles. So they were still pretty deep into the whole production process, but like people look at ADV and their business practices as what's that mythology about the dude flying into the sun? I don't pay Icarus, yeah. I just haven't touched any like Greek
Well, if
mythology
you
stuff in a while. I don't
it
know
is
if it's
Greek.
Greek
Like
either.
basically, the story of Icarus is how he had wax wings and he wanted freedom, but he flew too close to the sun
Mhm.
and his wings melted and he like drowned to death.
Yeah, just change freedom to dominance within the business, but ADV just flew too close to the sun. But instead of him falling into the sea and drowning, he got out of the water, but had a little bit of like water stuck in his lungs and stuff, and had to grow with certain disabilities later on, as in partnering with a licensing company of Sentai Filmworks. We know most of the staff from ADV just moved over there just so they can dodge some of the bankruptcy stuff. And then 5 other companies. Okay, this is going way too far into just the history instead of like shitty business practices. But this all started from said. But this all started from supposed mistakes from ADV, and some of it is still going on today. Sure, there's some improvements now. The distribution company for Section 23 that helps send out the discs and cases and stuff is improving their production quality a lot more. So they are improving, and seems they are, especially even improving the Anime Network and for High Dive. But outside of Houston, for Dallas, I don't really know any specific shady stuff involving like acquisition and partnership, except for Navarre and the Sony acquisition. But most of the stuff I know is like behind the scenes when it comes to like actor stuff.
If you don't want to talk about it, it's fine. We can do that for another video.
I feel like I can't really talk about specifically actor drama and stuff because I feel like it might be too much information, because I had this issue where I showed too much from a recording from Christopher Ayers at a convention at OhioCon, where he mentioned accidentally like who was the ADR director for said title. But then yeah, like this was way too early information. He contacted me telling me he got fired. Not fired. He got hanged out to dry and stuff after a long ass like yelling over it. So then he contacted me to take the video down, and I did. So I got to be very careful with this information and stuff. So I can only like say and stuff like this possibly happened or apparently and that type of stuff. You got to word it as in like it's not really like super accurate.
You just say like what I'm gonna say is you should just treat it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, so that's why I take the whole thing about being a researcher or an expert very like it's like it's
well, I wouldn't say expert.
I
would say you're more knowledgeable about anime dubs and stuff than I am. Like, if I wanted to know about anime dubs, I would ask you, like we're doing in this video. So, do you want to continue with this topic, or do you want to move on to the next question?
I can keep continuing. I can keep continuing. Apparently, with the Navarre Corporation deal, this has been apparently there was some issue with even though Navarre somewhat helped Funimation like through the whole bubble that bursted, Navarre was able to limit how many returns certain retailers could have for any unsold products. Sorry, just my cat's like on the door and stuff. I don't know if it's something
Navarre and stuff.
Yeah, the Navarre Corporation. In 2009, there's actually public information of their net earnings that they had under Navarre, which was pretty small in comparison to the gross that they have now, but that's obvious. Gross is obviously going to be a lot bigger than its net. So maybe that was also why Gen wanted to buy Funimation out, because even though they kind of helped them survive the bubble, they were basically just putting them on life support under their conglomerate. So they bought them out and formed a new conglomerate, which is Group 1200 Group Media. It's a bunch of mumbo jumbo, with Echolite Studios as one of them, which is like this Hallmark Christian studio thing that is not owned. It is under the CEO fist of a certain senator, I think.
So you've got a senator involved in anime dubs. Like, holy shit! God bless America.
Like an ex senator. Yeah, I think he's long gone from the political scene, but
a senator's still a senator, dude.
And Gen apparently was working a lot more on Echolite Studios, so it just feels like Gen is not really like taking care of or supervising Funimation enough. Like, of course, because the whole illusionary that other partnership that happened where they got a new COO that apparently probably said like some bad stuff and cause some like drama to happen. Um, but if I go any further than that, I feel like due to Funimation's
It's
power, I
fine. We
feel
can
like
stop. Do
I
you want to
can
move on
get
to the
like
next topic?
get severe backlash. Um, any other drama I can or like
It's
shady
fine. I think
stuff?
this is good enough. We've got decent. Do you want to continue with the next topic? Okay, dokie. Okay,
Sure.
next topic is all right. All right. Next
Yeah, I think
question,
it's all
number
done.
3. How do you think that dubbing has improved over the years with modern technology, licensing, actors and stuff like that over the years? Like, how do you think it's improved?
It has improved significantly compared to what we have now. Like what we starting from the 90s and stuff, it was just a bunch of bums off the streets going into a garage or going to someone's house and just recording some lines in a semi-soundproof booth, which is funny because then I see these fan dubbers that try to do their own thing, but the audio for those is like terrible, like recording wise in comparison to like the cheap stuff that you would see like from the 90s and stuff. Sure, the acting and direction would be probably off and very comedic, but the sound quality of it was not like horrendous where I can hear static or awkward noise in the background and stuff. Um um Even though I have issue with Funimation's way of simuldubbing, it does help them get a lot more people. Though there is potential like drama and like shady stuff going on with that, but I can't mention that. Now, studios, well, they have been like since the 90s, to the 2000s, and even before that, you would usually look into theaters. You would look into people like performing plays, and you'll just go snap like, that's the one. I want this person. It's a very universal thing, but it's rarely known in the terms of voice acting. Like, usually like some professional voice actors like Disney, like they don't really have that sort of thing. Like they would be like, oh, we do the acting, but then like, hey, I'll try some voice acting here or there, or their agent will just guide them towards them. But with places like Texas, and depending on LA and New York, sometimes like they'll just get pulled up by some random person, and then they'll just be pulled by the hand into the studio and stuff. Though with LA and New York, it's the difference of like having an agent alongside you to say it's a go or not. That's what the lingo that I'm trying to rationalize it as. And back in the day, usually people would have to stay very close to studios to do recordings and stuff. But now you can just like there's the whole example with Funimation again, and also with New York with Studiopolis, or was it another studio? But there's a studio of one single company that is in New York and LA, which allows them to expand their cast reach even further. Or you can do it even, it's the more risky way. But Brett Weaver, Vic Mignogna, and some other actors have done it, where they would basically make their own in-house studio and have the settings and the soundproofing just like the studio that they work on, which allows them to do the recordings and have them in the pristine quality that the directors want them to. And they would send them over via Dropbox, and boom, they wouldn't have to make a big-ass trip. There's companies that still prefer having people in-house to the studios, a la Sentai Filmworks, and even still, sometimes Funimation would prefer it as well. And yeah, the other companies too. I just know more stuff about the Texas thing than when it comes to specifically L.A. New York, probably know a little bit because the whole 4Kids shady stuff.
Can we please can we both agree
mentioned.
that 4Kids is like the worst dubbing studio ever?
No, I can't really say they're like the worst dubbing studio ever. When I think that they have some of the best casting choices. They just have some of the dumbest.
Okay, so we can
choices.
agree they're somewhat bad. Okay, so just continue.
But no, you basically just ended it where I really didn't have anything else really to say. It is advanced to the point that people can communicate with each other so well into. Like, it's no longer where like you had to camp near your studio. Sometimes some people do that, some people don't. Most actors are now moving up to New York or LA, and then sometimes moving right back. There was that example with Adam Gibbs who was doing that. Genevieve Simmons, and Adam Gibbs girlfriend. I forgot
That's
her
fine.
name,
Do you want to move
though.
on to the next topic? Okay, so the next question is,
Sure.
name a few voice actors do you think that are really good, or you believe in your opinion should deserve more praise than they actually get?
Okay, specifically Houston. Like I already mentioned this comment to Cartoon Cypher. I agreed with his opinion so much, but I do think that like the Houston scene should be recognized a lot more for their talent, especially from what they did back in the ADV days. Because mostly people just look at as ADV days as like the most horrendous thing, but yeah, we had like stuff like 4Kids. Okay, I'm being hypocritical though, even though I was defending 4Kids, but it's an iffy thing with 4Kids for me. But overall, it's just like it just feels like they're just looking at something and not looking at the flaws of the other one, and so for other companies. But yeah, I do admit that I have somewhat of a preference for Houston talent because they have a mix of naturalism in their voices, or they're just not trying to be so over the top with their voices to make them sound like so cartoonish and stuff. Not in comparison to the Japanese. I don't really compare the Japanese that much
Well,
because
the
it's kind of
Japanese
their
have a
own
different
specific
accent,
thing.
you know,
Um,
and like when I'm like
mhm.
watching an anime and like sub and dub, I just kind of picture in my head what they would sound like in English and what they would sound like in Japanese.
Yeah, like sure, you can see through the acting from their inflections and the direction that they're given. Though that doesn't mean that just because the Japanese does this means that you should do it the same exact way. Like sometimes I see in fan dubs where actors are directed to just say like this long ass line that was in the Japanese, but edit it out to make it somewhat smooth. But then you're making the actors like breathe out this line so much to where it just sounds like it's this forced delivery, or it's this exacerbated delivery. I don't know if that's the right word, where like you just say this line so quickly, but then you have your actor exhausted, then you can obviously tell like, oh, the next cut
Tatami
is
Galaxy
here.
will never be edited, will never be given an English dub because they speak Japanese so fast. It's like everything, like with Tatami Galaxy, it's like everything is
Mm-hmm.
like four
Um,
times speed. It's like, oh no, disco da, baku da, disco da, blah blah blah.
mhm. But yeah, back to actors. One example is Mark X. Lazowski. He is a common Ohioan like myself, who went over to Texas and basically become ADV's like best side character actor that can just pull his A game into every role, even though he has one distinct voice. Sometimes he goes for a more gruggly voice or a more high pitched one, but he just brings his A game into each role while sounding so much fun. Like, for example, Koto Hirano from High School of the Dead, like, watched it subbed and then watched it over dub. It's just like, it's fantastic and stuff. It's a little bit more snarkier. It just sounds like he's a little bit more of like a
Oh,
stone-headed, like,
is that who he was? Oh,
otaku
I
gummy
love that
dude
dude's
instead of
voice.
like, yeah.
He just adds so much energy to the series.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. In both the sub and the dub, in my opinion. Like, that's the thing I like with like High School of the Dead's dub and the English dub. They're different interpretations, but both of them are like awesome. Like, I can just jump over the Japanese.
Shall we have a
enjoy
moment
that,
of
or jump to
silence for the
dub
poor
and enjoy
mangaka of
that.
High School of the Dead? He will be missed.
I already had a long ass video of that, and it's still like the longest viewed
Well,
video.
the silence is over,
We don't really
so
need any more
continue.
silence for that. He's probably resting on some fine titties. Mm-hmm. Mark X. Lazowski, Andrew Love. People try to do like this comparison between Andrew Love and Christopher R. Sabat, though Andrew Love, he can bring a more mature, as in not mature as in like you're like this cartoonish, like bulky man person, but he can bring out this like more like hardcore, like shonen seinen-esque character. Like he can also play as in a JoJo episode too. Like he played Adam Blade
that was
in
him?
Needless,
Oh, he was pretty
and
good as
also
well.
any other manly characters. Like, it's pretty fun. He's a very fun dude, and he was also Takio in My Love Story. I'm glad he's getting some more recognition since Sentai is casting more Dallas actors into their roles to go alongside them. So people could be like, oh my god, Austin Tyndall is in this. Like, wait, who's he with this dude? Like, oh my god, he sounds cool too. Let me get an autograph. And that kind of thing. another specific actor. David Matranga is already like escalated into the popularity after getting into Funimation. Emily Neve, she's now becoming more of a writer, so she's not really doing that much acting. Hilary Haig,
So she's
the
like
queen of
Ryu
lollies,
Sukumiya.
I should say. Like, yeah, like people. I don't really know what you mean by that. All I know is that this lady, that voice that you hear from her when she is like that pink-haired, like rock and roll girl
Don't
in
worry,
Angel
Angel
Beats,
Beats is
I
very
forgot her
forgettable.
name. And then when she's like Saki from Ghost Stories, that's her voice when she's out of the studio too. Like, she does not have any other different voice. She's always high pitched, and the funny part is she's in real estate, I think. So, like, just imagine her behind, like, this big-ass desk and then just having that cute voice, like, mixed within, like, a Carrie Fisher-looking mug.
Do you want to move on to the last topic to wrap up this
hilarious.
video?
Yeah, I can't really think of anything else, because it seems like Sentai, or, like, all the people from Houston, and even some in Dallas that I enjoyed, are growing in more popularity. Stuff
Okay,
like
that's
Dallas
fine.
Reed,
Okay, let's move on to the last
Clifford
topic for
Chapman.
now, because I wanted to keep this
so,
to a
yeah.
short video, and I also wanted to use this video as sort of like a warm up to make it easier for me to do videos of multiple people, to record people singly. So the final question will be is, what in your opinion, Bradley, is the best anime dubbing studio?
Back in 2013 or 2011, further back than that, I would blindly be saying like Sentai and stuff, because that was when like I had a terrible bias for
Yes,
them.
I remember. We used to talk about this a couple of years ago. We used to call you the Sentai Filmworks addict.
You still do that now.
I can't help it, dude.
You post all over
I
Discord.
live for the memes, but continue.
Whatever. So I usually just I just mostly do compare and contrast, where like this is the strengths and weaknesses of this company, this is the strength and weaknesses of this other studio. For example, 4Kids, they can cast phenomenally well. Like, imagining Guts as Zoro in One Piece is fantastic. The voice of Guts doing chicken noises,
my
though,
favorite like
in the
4Kids
script, not so
actor
much.
was the dude who played Yami Yugi. Like, that dude's voice was him. His voice was so smooth and he sounded so
Dan
cool.
Green. You should be giving more props to Wayne Grayson. He does like everybody. He can play like a Brooklyn asshole like Joey. He can play a pussy like Cyrus. He can play like an asshole leader like Darts, and then he can go on to play like any other characters. It's
He's
amazing.
like Crispin Freeman. He's like the OG of voice actors.
Does Crispin Freeman have any other voices other than just his like
he has
like
Alucard,
frat boy?
And I think he did. No, he wasn't the dude who voiced Accelerator. I think there was someone else, but
I don't know. They sounded the same. Like, in comparison, I think you should probably be comparing like Steve Bloom. Like, Steve Bloom does like play like the Spike Spiegel wannabes and stuff, but he can do like some younger voices. And in the past, Christopher R. Sabat could do some as well.
Yeah, so continue on topic.
He's gotten too old, in my opinion. So yeah, then we jump over to Bang Zoom. They have some great history in dubbing some of the most important titles of our time, or the important dubs of our time that shaped dubbing as it is, but the people that did work on it, Kevin Seymour, Elizabeth McGlynn, that might not be the right person, but there was a side person that helped him direct Cowboy Bebop. And then when I see Kevin Seymour and like other stuff, it doesn't have the same touch as like Bebop's. So it just feels like most of that stuff was done by that other actress, or maybe it was just during the time frame that Kevin Seymour's mindset was
a moment
in,
of silence.
Rest in peace after
silence is over.
Stuff that happened. And I just really have issue with the recording process that Bang Zoom has with the 4-beep method. Similar to Funimation, but I feel like Bang Zoom tacks in the beep method way too much. Sure, like there was the whole behind the dubbing studio stuff where like, oh, there was people that were going together and like talking back and forth, but that's mostly for like American cartoons or cartoons that are storyboarded in America, then exported over to a Korean studio. But now even some American-made cartoons are not doing that anymore, as well as in like having actors together and doing stuff. We're now seeing the stuff of like the chasing method for or a semi chase and beep method that both Sentai and Funimation are doing. Though with Funimation, they do the beep method a lot better. I can't notice a lot of the cuts or different takes in each person's recording or inflection. Though I have issue with their female cast. Like their female cast is very similar. While Sentai has the best female cast, though their male cast is kind of underwhelming to me. This is where Funimation gets some props to. Though I like Sentai's way of naturalism with some of the direction, and when there's some stuff that is hammy, they can get a little bit more hammy to the point where it's like, oh, this person's trying to like be a character, but then the actor himself is just peeking out of the thing and just gooping up in his delivery and stuff, which just makes it funny and stuff, which makes like some funny moments in dubs, like a la Kill Me Baby.
Are you finished?
Mm-hmm.
Okie dokie. This is Bio Gundam. Thank you all for listening. And Average Aspie, would you like to say goodbye before we end this? Alright, so thank you for being a good sport, Average Aspie, and this is Bio Gundam signing off. See you later, you local drones, and we shall end recording right now.